David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. I like doing reviews of pens with lots of symbolism and tell an interesting story. The pen I have for you today certainly checks those boxes. It's the latest release from David Oscarson and is a tribute to Charles Lindbergh and his record-setting airplane, the Spirit of St. Louis. Now, there's a lot to talk about in regard to this plane, Charles Lindbergh, and aviation history. So I'm going to try not to get too bogged down in the details. After all, this is a fountain pen review. But to provide a bit of info, if you're not completely familiar with aviation history, Charles Lindbergh was an American aviator. Among other achievements, he was the first pilot to make a solo nonstop flight from New York to Paris. He did so in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. This was a significant milestone in history and ignited a boom in interest in aviation and the aircraft industry. The flight took over 33 hours and wasn't matched until a few years later when Amelia Earhart made a transatlantic crossing of her own, making her the first woman to achieve the feat. Okay, there will be a lot more history to go over, but what I'm going to do today is talk a bit about the symbolism of this pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. A big thanks go out to David Oscarson for providing this pen on loan for review. So, in order to get a closer look at this historically inspired offering, please join me over here at camera 2. The pen arrives in this very nice box. We have a number of things going on here. First of all, inside, there is a nice brochure. I know this isn't going to show it all in the screen, but it has really nice pictures. Let me kind of go sideways, of all of the David Oscarson models, which are really individual pieces of art. Yeah, this one is the Art Nouveau that I reviewed previously, which was very nice. And then there is a polishing cloth, which comes in handy since this pen is made from sterling silver. Then we have a certificate of authenticity. Then we have a really nice wood box. I'm just going to kind of leave it in here, but a very nice wood box that's a nice display box that just looks a little bit different. So if you left it sitting on your, it's one of those things that you'd like to have sitting on your desk or something along those lines. And then inside, we have a couple of things. We have the pen in this felt sleeve. Also included is a nice, maybe it's a faux leather. I'm not sure if it's faux leather or real leather, but a nice leather sleeve here, a little pouch, and I kind of like that striping in there. I just think that that looks kind of cool. It's just different than just having a solid color, so I kind of like that striping. And then underneath here, we have a couple of things. We have a packet of blue and black ink cartridges. There is an eyedropper to eyedropper the pen, and also a stick pen, the reason of which I will get to in a little bit. But let me go ahead and set this stuff aside. And here is the pen. There is a lot to go over with this particular model. First of all, this pen, as I mentioned before, is made from sterling silver and has enamel accents throughout. Coming in at 89 grams, it is rather hefty. It's available in a number of colors. There is the sunset, liquid coffee, sea green, sunburst, and sky blue, where the blue part obviously is land. Now, that's not really the case, but there's probably a handful of people who thought that obscure reference was funny. I'll let one of them explain the reference in the comments. This pen does have a torpedo shape where the cap angles up until about the last ½ inch or so, and then the barrel slowly tapers down to the end with the angle of decline increasing until you reach a rounded end. Okay, let's go ahead and start with the top of this cap and make our way down. On the very top, you can see that it is rounded. And then right below that, we have the registration number of the tail number of the plane, which is NX211. This is a unique alphanumeric code assigned to each plane for identification purposes. Think of it like a license plate for airplanes. You could see it here on the tail as it currently hangs in the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. The first letter is a country code. For aircraft registered in the U.S., that letter is N. Now, the letter for France is F. The letter for Japan is J. The letter for Great Britain is G. But having N for the United States seems a little bit odd. And it's because it is in recognition of the development of wireless communication by the U.S. Navy that had been using N as a prefix to its station call sign identifiers since 1909. The letter X denotes this as an experimental aircraft, meaning it was custom built, a non-standard design, not yet certified by aviation authorities, and then 211 was the number given to the actual plane. Below that, we have a rather healthy cap band and a rather clip band and a rather healthy clip. I do like this clip. I think that it is interesting that it's fashioned in the shape of a propeller. You know, I like when pens have, custom pens have unique clips. And this is one that will garner attention if someone sees it in your pocket, even without seeing the rest of the pen. Kind of having a propeller peek out from your pocket is kind of a cool thing. Next, we have some instruments down here. I know we're kind of getting it's tough to get a full view here without the shiny lights in here, but we have some instruments. Now, this is what the cockpit of the plane actually looked like. Take a look at that wicker chair. Besides being lightweight, Lindbergh didn't want the seat to be too comfortable in order to help him stay awake for the 33-hour trip. But I'm not thinking that chair is really up to safety standards of today. Now, just as a comparison, here is the instrument panel on the working replica of the Spirit of St. Louis, currently at the San Diego Air and Space Museum. When replicas like this are made, literally thousands of man-hours are put in to painstakingly duplicate each aspect of the original plane. My father actually works at the Air and Space Museum, where they create replicas such as these that will eventually hang in a museum or other museums around the globe. They're currently working on building a Hughes H-1, which was the last aircraft built by a private individual to set the world's speed record. But it literally takes years to build these planes. Here's the replica of the Spirit of St. Louis, which is in the museum. As I mentioned, this is a working replica, meaning that it was an actual flying aircraft. Okay, next up, we have the name of the aircraft. It was painted on the nose of the plane. The Spirit of St. Louis was actually built in San Diego by a company called Ryan Airlines. The reason it wasn't called the Spirit of San Diego was because the financial support that was critical to Lindbergh's historical transatlantic flight came from backers in St. Louis. But the international airport in San Diego is named Lindbergh Field in his honor. Beneath that is a number of flags. You can see here that during the transatlantic flight, the flags were not present. This is because the flags represented each of the countries where the plane eventually visited. All of the flags are hard enamel, which is kiln-fired glass. Typically, in things like cloisonne, you have dividers of silver between the colors, which helps the colors from blending into one another. With the detail on these flags being so small, let me see how close I can get here. With the detail being so small, that wasn't possible. So they needed to determine different techniques of accomplishing the end goal. And the end result was the flags, which actually looked like they're weathered and almost looked like they're stickers on the plane, or not stickers on the plane, but just the hand-painted kind of weathered look to them. And just like the hand-painted flags on the actual aircraft do. It's pretty amazing. And even the more detailed flags, and even the larger emblems here, like the Marine Corps emblem, look very, very close to the originals. I just think this is some pretty amazing work. At the end of the cap, there is a medium-sized step up to the cap band, which has the David Oscarson name as well as logo. Then over here, we have the limited edition number for this pen. This is a limited edition of 72 pens of each color. Then we have the silver hallmarks. I don't know how close we can get there. But now sterling silver hallmarks can be a bit confusing, but I believe that the combination of the lion as well as the uncrowned leopard's head indicates this silver was assayed in London, England, and the letter Z indicates it was done so in 2025. Actually, 2024, excuse me. For the date, they actually cycle through the alphabet using different fonts for each time through. That's how you can date silver, is by the font on that letter. These are each applied by hand, and at times on other items, the marks can be a bit wonky and out of line, and so I appreciate how straight and well spaced these are. It's really the kind of attention to detail that I like to see on pens. Then there is a fairly large step down to the remainder of the barrel, which contains a map graphic. Actually, first of all, it does have this guilloche pattern. And the map graphic, it depicts Lindbergh's trip from New York over here. Then it has the plane all the way over here to Paris, where this other dot is. Now, you might ask, why Paris and not just England or even Ireland, which are over here and are a little bit closer? Well, that's because in 1919, a businessman by the name of Raymond Ortigue put up $25,000 to be awarded to the first Allied pilot to fly nonstop from New York to Paris or from Paris to New York, which was the equivalent of about $500,000 today. This was appropriately enough called the Ortigue Prize. And for the first 5 years, the prize attracted no competitors at all. At the time, this flight really seemed beyond the capacity of aircraft and human endurance. In addition, the cost necessary to make an attempt for the trip far exceeded the amount of the prize. Now, in 1919, a team of 2 pilots made the journey across the Atlantic, but it had never been accomplished solo. Lindbergh's team wasn't the only one attempting to make the trip. There were several other teams working towards the same goal, and at least 6 people died in preparation for attempts. So it was a dangerous challenge that many people were attempting to achieve. There were other prizes as well for different aviation feats. For example, in 1927, 40 pilots attempted various long-distance over-ocean flights, leading to 21 deaths during the attempt. So there was certainly danger involved in this flight. Here you can see where it says May 20th to 21st, 1927, which was the dates the flight took. And it was 3,610 miles, and it took 33 hours and 30 minutes. Here at the bottom of the barrel, if I twist this around, it does say Ryan NYP. Ryan is the name of the company which made the plane, and then NYP is an acronym for New York, Paris, and Ryan NYP was the official name of the aircraft. So Spirit of St. Louis is kind of a nickname, but the Ryan NYP is the official name. The cap twists off with 1.5 rotations, and underneath we have a number 6 two-toned 18-karat gold Bach nib. It's stamped with the David Oscarson logo, and I think it looks pretty classy. It's available in either fine, medium, or broad. You'll see in the writing sample, but this nib is outstanding. When you purchase a luxury pen in this price range, you would hope that the writing experience is as luxurious as the pen itself. And in the case of this pen, it really doesn't disappoint. It's one of those nibs where when you hand it to someone to use, they will say, wow, at the first few gentle strokes. It is really special. And then here is a look at the plastic feed. The section begins with a raised ring and then angles up into the metal threads and a small step up to the remainder of the barrel. On the section itself, its patterning is inspired by the cowling on the plane, which is the enclosure that surrounds an aircraft engine, typically for aerodynamic and cooling purposes. This is what it looks like on the actual plane. It's also engraved with the signature of Charles Lindbergh. Now, slick metal sections are typically pretty heinous, and that I'm so glad when pen manufacturers do something to counteract that slickness with unique patterning like this. It's almost like fish scales. While I can't describe this patterning as smooth, it's unique and does a great job of helping you maintain your grip. The signature of the engraving is very high quality as well and doesn't contain any sharp edges or burrs like some engraving like this can have. So you really don't feel the signature at all when this pen is in your hand. As I mentioned before, this pen is rather hefty, but I do find it to be well balanced. You're not going to want to post this very heavy cap, which is fine. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges and a converter is provided. I do like that there is an O-ring here to help smooth out the last quarter turn or so. It just feels better than metal on metal contact. With this pen being made of all sterling silver, it can be eyedroppered. That's why there was this stick pen in with the box, because there is also an additional O-ring, and you can use that pen to help apply that extra O-ring as an extra layer of safety. But you can eyedropper this pen, and as I showed earlier, it also included an eyedropper with the pen. So eyedropping it is possible if you so choose. The David Oscarson Spirit of St. Louis is priced similarly to other offerings from the company. It retails for just under $7,000. It's also available in a rollerball for about $500 less. I'll put a link to where you can find the pen on the David Oscarson website, but they are also available from a large number of retailers as well. Okay, let's take a look at some measurements, size comparisons, and then a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the David Oscarson Spirit of St. Louis. Here it is with a Montblanc 149. It's somewhat similar in size to that. Here it is with a Classic Pens LB5. And then here it is with a Pelikan M1000. And then in regard to some other offerings, here it is with a Sailor King of Pen Pro Gear. And here it is with a Conid Bulk Filler King Size. And then finally, here it is with a Nokia Dorsal Fin 2. In regard to uncapped comparisons, here it is with that Pelikan M1000 and the Montblanc 149, and then the Classic Pens LB5. Okay, here we go with the writing sample for the David Oscarson Spirit of St. Louis. This is a medium 18 karat gold nib, and the ink I'm using here is Lamy Dark Lilac. And it is I will say it's the new Dark Lilac. This is what the ink looks like. If you don't recall, Lamy re-released the Dark Lilac ink. It was originally released a number of years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago. And that you can see that this new formula has a bit more of that kind of golden yellowy sheen to it. This is what it looks like with a more saturated purple, which is the Cross Violet. And then here it is with another one of my favorite purples, which is the Pilot Iroshizuku Murasaki Shikbu. This is what the Lamy bottles look like. I like that they're unique. It's really easy to get the ink out of here. You know, they do have these little things to paper to wipe off the nibs. I have a tendency not to use it. As you can see, I have used it just to label this new so that I can make sure that I differentiate it from my older bottle that I have. So I find that helpful. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. I think I had the pen open for a little while, which is why it had a little bit of a hard start, but that was my fault here. As I mentioned before, this nib is outstanding. That it is really smooth and really a pleasure to use. Like I said, you can get a bit of line variation out of there, but the nib is just glorious. Like I said, it's one of those nibs that you're going to hand it to someone and they're going to use it and you're going to be like, oh, wow. It is rather generous in regard to the ink flow, in regard to reverse writing. It's fairly smooth, even on the reverse writing, and then in regard to some fast writing. With a little help from Jenny there, you can see that the feed does not have an issue in keeping up. So there we have the David Oscarson Spirit of St. Louis. I really enjoy themed pens, and if you are in the market for a luxury fountain pen and happen to be a big aviation buff, then this pen would be a perfect combination of symbolism and quality and performance. It is well worth checking out. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.